Hello and welcome to the Handed Down podcast. I'm Jenny Shaw and I'm joined today by singer, multi-instrumentalist and prolific songwriter Peter Madeley. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for the word prolific.
Well, it's true. Tell us a bit about your musical journey so far. What got you started as a musician? Where did it all start for you?
It started with piano lessons when I was a kid. Reluctant piano lessons when I was a kid. And when I got to about 14 or 15, I rebelled against it. So Mum sold the piano, and when we went to the music shop, there was a keyboard in the window. So I said, well, can I buy the keyboard instead? So we bought the keyboard, and then I started creating sort of instrumental music, a little bit like Jean-Michel Jarre and Kraftwerk, that type of music. Oh, yeah. So that was my teenage years, probably until I was about 23, 24. And then when I started working, everything got put up in the loft. And round about 35, the kit came down again, and then it started to build and build and build and build and build, and now it's taken over one whole room of the house.
You play a lot of instruments. What instruments do you play?
First instrument is keyboard. Then I started to learn to play the guitar because I couldn't play it. The idea being that if you pick up an instrument that you don't know how to play, you don't drop into cliches. Then I picked up the ukulele and started playing that. Then bass guitar, tenor guitar, percussion.
Yeah, you're a one-man band, basically.
Anything I can, yeah, but I can only play one thing at once. That's the trouble.
That's a really interesting point about getting into a rut with an instrument you know really well, because that's really easy to do, isn't it?
Well, I went and bought a tenor guitar, and the tenor guitar is tuned obviously differently to an ordinary guitar. And as soon as I picked it up and tried to play a chord, I found I couldn't play a chord, but I found a little pattern that I liked, and instantly a song fell out. Just because you have to play and you have to be creative in order to get something out of it.
And you've been on a bit of a journey as a singer as well, haven't you? Tell us about that.
Yes, very reluctant singer, in actual fact. I went up to Stones Barn on a singing course, and the first time that I had to sing in public, I suddenly realised that we were going around the room asking each person to sing, and I was right at the end of the circle. And then the person who was leading the course said, well, if you don't sing, you don't get fed. So I was forced to do it. And in the end, the only way I could face it was to actually set up my keyboard facing the wall with my back to the audience. That was the only way I could get through it. Managed to get through that. And then the following night, the confidence came and I was able to stand up in front of everybody and sing, and actually sang a parody song of James Blunt, You're Beautiful, to Maddie Pryor of all people. So, yeah, that was quite a strange thing to have Maddie sat in front of me laughing at the song I'd written for her overnight. But yeah, quite an experience. And Stones Barn is quite an experience as well. The courses that they run up there are incredible.
I can testify to that. They're absolutely amazing. That's a bit like learning to swim by jumping in the deep end, though, isn't it?
Yes, and very much drowning first.
And I mean, you're a very confident singer now.
Well, that's come about really because I joined a band about 5 years ago. Yeah. I didn't know it was a band. I thought it was a guitar group. And I went in without a guitar, and a similar thing happened. We went round the circle asking to do a solo, and I'd walked into this room without a guitar, so I just sang a solo. At which point the band leader said, oh, we've been looking for a singer, welcome. I've been singing with that band ever since.
And what started you writing songs?
I've been doing the instrumentals for a long, long time, and then I went on a songwriting course, and it was just for a bit of fun as much as anything, and I found that I could do it. And I just enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the catharsis of doing it. I enjoyed the creative process and the state of flow that you get into when you're doing that particular process, both writing lyrics but also writing music. That ability to completely lose yourself is something that I really appreciate, and you can't always get it in other ways. You know, some people can get it through meditation, some people can get it through mindfulness, but music for me is a very good way to get into that out of your head sort of flow state.
about traditional songs and songs that you've learned by word of mouth. What kind of songs attract your interest?
Just songs that are simple to sing, and actually ones that have got a narrative to it, the story songs. And I try to, in my own songs, have an element of narrative to them, because I think that keeps the interest for the listener, but also for the performer as well.
The song you brought today, we're billing it as a bit of a Halloween special, but because it's got witches in it, but it's mainly about place, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It was a song that just came up one night at band practice. The title of it is Old Pendle. And I'd never heard this song before. And it's a very, very simple song in that it's just a verse song. There's no chorus, no bridge section to it at all. So it's a very simple one to play. But it's important to me because it mentions the places that I used to live in. I used to look out of my childhood window and look at Pendle Hill. And when I went to school, I would look out of the classroom window and see Pendle Hill. So the rivers that are mentioned in the song and the places that are mentioned in the song are the places that I would learn to drive through, are the places that I would ride my bike through, are the places where I would go to court girlfriends. So sounds like I'd got a lot, doesn't it, that? But so it's sort of very, very relevant and created images for me in my own mind, When you look at the first verse, obviously the first verse is very geographically based. It mentions my local towns, Burnley, Clitheroe, where I went to school, Worley, when I took the bus to school, that went through, Colne, I've been up there, the Hodder and the Ribble is places that I used to go fishing, Barley and Downham, they're places that are on the side of Pendle Hill. But there's a nice shape to the melody. Sometimes what I like to do is actually, because I can't notate music, but what I will do is I'll draw a little graph of how the melody goes up and down. And the melody is very much the shape of Pendle Hill. Almost as if the person who's written the melody looked at the shape of Pendle Hill and decided, do you know what, I'm going to make my melody a similar sort of shape, which I found absolutely fascinating, that those two things should tie up. And then when you get into the second verse, it's talking about something that's far more abstract, how people look at the mountain and it's important to them. It is majestic. It overshadows the whole of the Ribble Valley. It's the most dominant feature that's there. And that is reflected in verse 2. And then verse 3 is the verse where it talks about the witches. And it's the only verse that talks about the witches and how people were fearful of the witches and how they tried to keep them out, the evil spirits. And then the last one is more really talking about, I think it's talking about the people who live in the shadow of Pendle Hill. And it's about a journey, the journey that people take, and that people will sometimes stop on that journey and just look at Pendle Hill and realise that it's been there for thousands of years and will always be there for thousands of years, and then millions of years after that, even after other people are long gone. And in some ways that's a little bit like the song. Those people that sing it now will come and will go. So we'll pass on that song to the next generation, and hopefully the song will last as long as the hill lasts, which is quite a nice way to finish it off. But there's some lovely language in there. You've got the words thy and thou, the word standest, the word twixt to mean between, and the idea of fair waters, meaning the rivers. So it's quite a poetic language, but it doesn't stop you from accessing what the song's actually about.
There's a real sense of community around it, isn't there? So there's people online who knew the writer, there's people who know the history of the song. It's very localised. Well,
it was very strange because on a Monday night, the band leader introduced the song to us and we learned to sing it. And on the Thursday night, we went to a concert to listen to the Horton Weavers and they sang it as well. So it was almost as if I was fated to sort of come across this song. And it's one that I play at school as well with the children. I run a ukulele group at school. The children enjoy playing it as well to try and introduce them a little bit to some traditional music and obviously some local music as well.
So tell us about the history of the song.
So Pendle Hill it's in northeast Lancashire, and it's believed that witches once lived around there, around about 1612. It's the Lancashire witches that many people will have heard about. And this song has sort of been woven into the mythology of the hill a little bit. And there is some argument about who has contributed what to it. It was allegedly written in the 1950s by two brothers, Milton and Allen Lambert, and the tune was written by Ted Edwards. But then other people have said that it was a guy called Brian Osborne who used to collect tunes, and it was his tune that was used, and that he also added a verse as well. Brian Osborne used to play with a band called the Blackpool Taverners. So apparently he added some extra sections in 1958 as well. And other people have also added to the song. There are 3 or 4 different verses that don't appear in the version that I sing, but lots of people seem to add to it. But there are other places where this tune sort of appears. There's a band called Tickawinda that I'd never heard of before, and they had an album called Rosemary Lane, and there was a song on that particular album with a melody that's very, very similar. So nobody's really quite sure where the melody came from, and there's quite a lot of controversy about who actually wrote the words as well. It's quite interesting to try and track down where these songs have come from, and it can be quite interesting to sort of see that it's not always just one person that's written them. You know, they are handed down very much with an oral history tradition, and I mean, my version is going to be different from what the Horton Weavers would have done, or what I do with the band as well.
So tell us a little bit more about these other verses. You said there's some other verses that aren't in your version.
Yeah, it just seems to be that people just enjoy the song so much they want to add to it. So I have a thing here from somebody called Henry P. This was from a website somewhere, and they'd offered this verse. Pendle, old Pendle, you've seen it before. The hardship of labour, the horror of war. We'll work with our sisters, sunrise to nightfall, to build a new world that is fit for us all.
Oh, I like that.
I liked it, but it didn't seem to add anything particular to the mythology of the song.
No, it's quite different. It takes it in quite a different direction, doesn't it?
Yes, and then there was another version that had been written by Ian Smith. There's Snowdon and Snaefell and Nevis and all, but against all these mountains you're still standing tall. Your crest is in heaven, your roots are in hell. Pendle, fair Pendle, we love you right well. They've tried to sort of dig deeper down into the idea of Pendle being part of this greater collection of mountains, if you will, because I mean, there's no way that it's anywhere near as tall as Snowdon and Snaefell and Ben Nevis and so forth. But obviously, it's big in people's psyche, I think.
It is, and connects heaven and hell. Quite a lot going on in that one verse.
And then another verse written by somebody called Eric Payne. And I dream of the days on your summit I walked, and climbing your cart track with Pendleside folk, and sleeping by wall sides encompassed by sheep, and drinking cool water at springs where you weep.
There's just something about a folk song, isn't there? There's a bit of a blank canvas there for everyone to contribute to.
Yeah. Maybe that's something that I need to do in the future, is think about adding a verse of my own. That would be something that I could do, I suppose.
Well, that would be great, especially given your personal connection with the area.
Yeah, I think that might be quite a nice idea.
Then you'd be a permanent part of its story, wouldn't you?
Yeah, leave something in my own heritage for other people.
You handed it down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what traditional music's supposed to be about, isn't it?
It is. What do we know about the Pendle witches?
Well, they were all women. Many people think that they were just herbalists, and obviously herbal medicine is now more prevalent than it was. But they were condemned for the way that they used to carry out their practices, and they were made to march from Pendle all the way across to Lancaster, where they were tried and then eventually hung for witchcraft. But the mythology has stayed in the area. There's a very strange phenomenon that happens sometimes in the winter when the snow falls on the side of Pendle Hill and then it starts to melt. All of the snow melts except for one little valley, and the valley where the snow has collated and collected makes the shape of a witch right on the side of the mountain. It's almost prophetic in some ways, and you wonder whether some of the legends of the witches came from somebody seeing this image on the side of the hillside. But you can go to places like Downham and, the places that are mentioned in the song, and people still talk about the heritage of Pendle Hill, and it still can be a very ominous place. In fact, our band leader, his wife, she's related many, many times down the line to Alice Nutter, who was one of the Pendle witches. Yeah. So it is quite strange that the band leader should then introduce it to the band and then to me, and it's almost like it's come full circle.
It's really interesting how it comes back to the landscape as well, and the witch being in the landscape, because I think this song, that coming at it as a relative newcomer to this song, it was very much about the landscape. I could see it, even though I've never been there. I could see the landscape from the song. And your connection to that area as a child as well.
Yes, we used to go walking on there. I used to fly my glider from the top of it. I used to go fishing in the rivers that are mentioned in the song as well. So every time you sing it, it brings back a slightly different memory for you. It's a very personal song in that respect.
And you're passing it on to the kids that you work with, which is lovely.
Yes, it's quite strange that they should enjoy singing it. It's surprising the songs that they enjoy singing. You'd expect them to want to sing pop songs, but they do like singing this one. I don't know quite what it is, whether the fact that it's in a minor key, so it's a little bit dark. Maybe that's something, because obviously in schools we don't sing dark songs at all. They tend to be in major keys, so something that's in a minor key stands out a little bit more. But having 8 children around you all playing ukuleles, playing and singing Old Pendle is really quite special.
And we're going to hear your recording of it shortly. And I was just saying before we started, I got completely lost in listening to your version because it's so sumptuous. Tell us a little bit about how you put it together.
For a start, I'm not a terribly good guitarist, so I do rely on building things up in software. So usually what I will do is I play to a click track, and this one is at 135 beats a minute, and that just gives me that solid tempo. It also means that you can cut and paste things and move things around in the software. So because this song is a verse structure, all I really had to do was to get one take on the guitar that was a solid take, and then I could just copy it up. And then from there, I was able to play along with a different guitar, and then a different guitar again, and a different guitar again, and have them all layered up. So there's 5 layers of guitars, and there's 2 layers of ukulele in just the instrumental section. And then there's a bass guitar in there as well. And I think that's what gives it that richness. And the great thing about that is that you can actually have these guitar parts coming in and dropping out. So it keeps the musical interest going. You don't have the same instrument going from right at the start, right to the end of the track. You can build a little bit of dynamic in, tonally as well as, volume wise. And then with the singing part of it, the lead vocal has been sung twice. And I choose the best lead vocal, which I mix slightly higher. And then the second lead vocal, I mix at about half the level of the other one. So that the weaker vocal supports the stronger one. And the fact that it's slightly different and sometimes slightly out of tune just gives it a richness. Recording people call it double tracking. And then there are 7 layers of harmony vocals that come into this as well. Some low vocals and some high vocals. And right at the end of the song, I couldn't quite work out how to finish it. This is a bit of a secret as well. Couldn't work out how to finish it because it doesn't have an obvious ending. It's just verse, 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 verse. And then I accidentally hit the delete button on the keyboard and it deleted all of the guitar tracks and just left the vocal there. But it just sounded so good. I thought I'll leave it. It was just one of those fortuitous mistakes that just sounded great. And I'd never heard anybody do it with an a cappella ending. So that's why it has the a cappella ending. It's a complete mistake, which just happens to sound pretty good.
Happy mistake. What were you trying to do with the recording? Was there a particular feel that you were going for? What were you trying to bring out of the song in your version?
Well, it has a very clear 3/4 rhythm, and it was to try and just get the emphasis on the one beat, so that it sort of drives. If I could play a boran, I would have somebody playing a boran in the background to give it that. I have a boran, but I can't play it.
You know what? So do I. I'm looking at it right now, and it's looking at me, saying, "Why can't you play me?"
Yeah, I just hit it with an ordinary drumstick and hope to get away with it.
Hope for the best.
Maybe one day I'll find somebody that can actually play it properly and lay down a boran track for me. That'd be great.
So we're coming towards the end. I'm just going to ask you if you've got anything that you want to plug, anything coming up, any recordings that you're involved in at the moment that people might be able to get hold of.
There's nothing that's available just at the moment. I'm writing an album with Steve Hubble at the moment. We have 14 songs that are completed, but they are very different and we haven't decided how they are going to be distributed. But I'm also involved in writing some meditation tracks for our local meditation centre as well. And those will be available online, probably via Facebook in actual fact. But I like to sort of put things into the community where I possibly can, because some of these places can't afford to have a professional composer write for them. So if I can write a 2-minute piece that somebody can then do a meditation over, that's great. It's a way of making a contribution to that service, you know. And
you're in a band. You've talked about your band.
We do gigs in the local area for local village fetes and so forth.
And whereabouts in the country do people need to be if they want to catch a glimpse of you?
Underneath Pendle Hill, strangely enough.
Pendle Hill.
Yes.
That's where everything happens.
Well, yeah, it does. We can't quite see Pendle Hill from the rehearsal room, but we are actually facing towards it when we're playing.
It's been absolutely great talking to you, Peter. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of today's show now. We will be back next month and we're going to continue with the spooky theme with a ghost story and also an encounter with death himself. But for now, a really big thank you to today's very special guest, Peter Madeley, who is going to play us out with Old Pendle.
Pendle, oh Pendle, thou standest alone, twixt Burnley and Clitheroe, Whalley and Cone, where Hodder and Ribbles fair waters do meet, with barley and down and content at thy feet. Pendle, oh Pendle, majestic, sublime, thy praises shall ring till the end of all time. Thy beauty eternal, thy banner unfurled, thou dearest and grandest old hill in the world. Standest alone, twixt Burnley and Clitheroe, Whalley and Cone, where Hodder and Ribbles fair waters do meet, with barley and down and content at thy feet. Witches fly out on a dark rainy night, will not tell a soul and will bar the door tight, we'll sit near to fire and keep ourselves warm, till once again we can walk on thy arm. Pendle, oh Pendle, thou standest alone, twixt Burnley and Clitheroe, Hawley and Combe, where Hodder and Ribble's fair waters do meet, with barley and down and content at thy feet. Pendle, oh Pendle, by moorland and fell, in glory and loveliness ever to dwell, on life's faithful journey where'er I may be. I'll pause in my labours and oft think of thee. Pendle, oh Pendle, thou standest alone, twixt Burnley and Clitheroe, Hawley and Combe, where Hodder and Ribble's fair waters do meet, with barley and down and content at thy feet. Pendle, oh Pendle, thou standest alone, twixt Burnley and Clitheroe, Hawley and Combe, where Hodder and Ribble's fair waters do meet, with barley and down and content at thy feet.